will high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We're saluting the lifetimes and music of a man the Minneapolis Star Tribune called the patriarch of the Minnesota bluegrass scene, Mr. Alan Jesperson. We're so glad that we were able to get a hold of Alan Jesperson's younger brother, Peter, who was, in his own way, as they consider Alan Jesperson the patriarch of the Twin Cities bluegrass scene. Peter was, in a way, the patriarch of the Minneapolis punk and new wave scene, running Orfolk Jokopus Records in the 70s and 80s, where he discovered the Replacements. Also ran Twin Tone Records, among other things, a real prime mover. We're very excited to have Peter on the line. Peter, first of all, my deep condolences for the loss of your brother Alan.
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate that.
Tell us about the Jesperson household. Obviously, it was a musical household, and where did Alan and young Peter get their musical influences?
Well, it wasn't really a musical household in terms of my parents anyway. They, liked music as much as the next person, I think, but it wasn't anything that was a major interest of either of theirs. And so that's what we've always thought was a little bit, unique, kind of funny about my brother and I being music obsessives. We're not really sure where it came from. I think part of it had to do with the fact that, at our respective ages, my brother was 7 years older than I was, born in 47. I was born in 54. And so he was swept up in the late 50s folk boom. And then that kind of, through the early 60s and the years of things like Peter, Paul, and Mary and Bob Dylan, following the 50s stuff like the Chad Mitchell Trio and the Kingston Trio and the Limelighters and that sort of stuff, Weavers, etc. It was Alan who leaned into bluegrass at that point, just following the acoustic music to a more specific, genre. For me, I guess I just started liking the music I heard on Top 40 radio. I remember things like Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly and the Kingston Trio, as a matter of fact, who had as you probably remember, Paul, a big top 40 hit with Tom Dooley. Tom Dooley in 1958. Yep. So those are kind of the springboards that we leapt from, and in different kinds of music. I like most of what he liked. He didn't like very much of what I liked, to be honest. He didn't like the rock music very much. But in fact, I remember in 1968, I guess, or early 69, when the Byrds made the Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde album. He had bought it for himself and said, "This is way too rock for me," and handed it over. And I still have that copy of that record and love it. But we didn't like the same kind of music, but we were both such music fans. We bonded, I think, on that in those early years.
Was Alan starting to play around the house as a kid?
He was. He got his first guitar probably when he was 15 or 16, and he did play around the house all the time. I mean, he just wore it like it was, another appendage of his body. I mean, it was just constant walking around, picking at it. He acquired some nice guitars. I'm not all that well versed in the specific models, but he was a Martin guitar guy, and had a couple of very nice Martins that he had right up until the time he passed, and was very, very happy about those. And I remember them sounding, beautiful as Martin guitars do. So yeah, he played around the house all the time.
What when he started the Middle Spunk Creek Boys back in 1968, and that, they had I believe it was almost a 40-year run as one of the house bands at Delano's Pizza, not too far up the street from your place at Orfolk Jokopus, which is 26th and Lindale, and of course, Delano's was right on Lake Street, just about a block and a half east of Lindale. Did you ever go out and hear your brother's bands play over the years?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I remember the first times that I saw him play, I believe, were at the Scholar.
Really?
The Scholar on the West Bank. It originally had been in Dinkytown, and then they moved over to Seven Corners there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I first saw him and went on a regular basis when they had the original trio.
Well, such a stalwart, great band, and one of the oldest bands playing that music till the very, very end. Now, Peter, what did, when you got into your music and the record store and the Replacements, and you were also DJ down at the Longhorn, introducing the Twin Cities music scene, not only to great bands that were coming up, like the Replacements and Husker Du, but you also were bringing a lot of imported records from England with a lot of the punk and the new wave stuff that was coming from there. What did your brother Alan think of that whole journey that his younger brother Peter took off on?
Well, I think that I remember a specific story that he that illustrates it. I had originally thought that when I got out of high school, that my path was going to be radio. I love to play music for people, and I thought being a DJ was going to be my ticket. And so I did go to broadcasting school and took radio electronics and whatnot over at Brown Institute on East Lake Street. And
Sure.
I went into radio for about a year and a half and found that it was not really what I wanted to do. It was if I had found a job at a station that I had complete freedom on, it would have been a different story. But I was working for an AM station that was country and an FM station that was soft rock, I guess you'd call it. And, I had to follow a gold record format, and it was quite limiting. And although I enjoyed it and there were some great people that I learned from at that job, it didn't seem like the thing that I wanted to do long term. And I'd been working part-time at Orfolk by then, while I was in radio school, and then when I got the first radio job. And when I expressed my frustration with the radio situation to the owner of Orfolk one evening over dinner at his house, he said, "Well, I've been thinking I'd like you to come full-time and manage the store if you're interested." And I jumped at the opportunity. So when I left radio, I remember my father, feeling like I had, given up on a goal that I had set for myself, and he was a little disappointed. And I think that over the course of the, first couple of years that I was really ensconced full time at Orfolk, Alan was around the store, would stop in an awful lot. He and other, musicians that he played with would pop in. And, we had you remember, Paul, as well as anybody, I think, that Orfolk was even though we were known for, selling punk rock records and new wave records and imports from, the UK and other European countries, we had a pretty broad-based collection. We had, blues and jazz and classical music and all the folk and bluegrass and disco and everything. So I think Alan appreciated the fact that, we were doing good work at Orfolk. And I remember him telling my dad that he thought I was doing something really, I don't know if he used the word important, but he thought I was doing something that was, of value. And that went a long way in calming my dad down a little bit from, my diverging path I took.
I have probably 200 records in my collection that still have the Orfolk sticker on it, and you're exactly right. I got a acoustic fingerstyle. I got my Peter Lang and Leo Kottke records down there. I got my Dexter Gordon records down there. I got my Bob Dylan records. I mean, I probably have 6 or 7 genres of music with the Orfolk sticker. And back then, you could get a almost a brand new record for about 50 cents to $1. So, Peter, I want to thank you for having such a wide view of music and making it available to customers like myself. Peter, we really appreciate your time tonight. How will you remember your older brother, Alan, as you move forward in your life?
Well, he was just, I love the guy. I mean, he was a great big brother. He was somebody that I admired greatly. He was very smart. I loved his handwriting. Was something I really always loved. He had a very, there was a little artistic flair to his handwriting, I think. He was a very funny man. He and my dad would riff on each other back and forth constantly. And so there was a lot of laughs going around at our house in those days. And also, in a lot of ways, I have him to thank for being really maybe my first real musical mentor. When he loved something, I knew it was good and I paid attention to it. So even though I was maybe more drawn to the rock and roll music of the 50s, I appreciated, those records that he listened to, and that helped form my musical taste, and I think helped me, gain some knowledge in, some areas of music that I might not have otherwise known about. So I guess I think of him in many ways, great big brother, funny guy, smart guy, and music guy.
That's fantastic, Peter Jesperson. We're going to end this segment on the Wall of Power Radio Hour with a song from the Middle Spunk Creek Boys. It features Alan on lead vocals, called Miner's Silver. Peter, thanks so much for your time, and let's please stay in touch.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you for inviting me to be on the program. I appreciate it. Thanks to Brett, too.
We enjoyed it. Thank you.
Take care, sir.
On a cold and stormy night, I was sitting in the light of my switchman shack, a milepost on the mountain. The storm was pretty bad, the telephone was dead, but it was just 11 hours till the dawn. Then much to my surprise, the telegraph jumped in the line. As I read the code, I thought, could this be true? A train was on its way, headed up the mountain grade, but it didn't have no engineer or crew. The other switch had tried to put it on the mountainside, but it kept on coming up the mountain grade. I quickly doused the light to try and see into the night. Maybe I could spot her headlight in the rain. She was pounding down below, I could hear her whistle blow, and I thought, Lord, that's a high and mournful sound. The telegraph again, there's a cave at the mine, and 100 men are buried beneath the ground. Lord, she's coming now, I see, around the bend and straight at me, and her boiler's glowing red as coal in hell. Headlights switching wide, searching on the mountainside, but the only sound she's making is a wail. Then I recognize the train by the number and the name. It's the Miner's Silver Ghost 041.
Welcome back to the second set on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We're saluting the life and times of a man named Alan Jesperson, who the Star Tribune called is the patriarch of the Twin Cities bluegrass scene. We've got a fellow named Bruce Jagger who played in Alan's band, the Middle Spunk Creek Boys, for years. Bruce, nice to have you on the line tonight. Tell us how you hooked up with the Middle Spunk Creek Boys and your life and times playing with the great Alan Jesperson.
Sure. Brief history. I the first band I was in was the Glacial Drifters, with a man who had been in the Middle Spunk Creek Boys, C.J. Anderson. And that had like one gig, and thankfully nobody recorded it. And a fellow that was the owner of the guitar store where you used to teach, Paul Moe, and I formed a band called Buckacre back in, 76, I think it was. And I played with them until about 1981, when very amiably we just... everybody decided they wanted to do something different, don't want to play anymore. And a couple of years before that, actually, Middle Spunk Creek Boys needed a mandolin and fiddle player. And I was able to do both because Buckacre wasn't playing much, and so it was a smooth transition to the Middle Spunk Creek Boys. And I know it's 1981 because when we did our 1993 album, 25th anniversary, we all had to look all that stuff up. So that's fairly accurate.
So what was your initial impressions of Alan Jesperson, the man?
Well, when I first met him, he and Jerry Flynn knew the words to every song ever written. And of course, anybody that plays bluegrass knows the chorus of every song, but he and Jerry both knew everything, and they had been folkies back in the folk scare days and moved over to bluegrass. So he was a guy I was sort of in awe of a little bit, except that I had already gotten my musician's ego going pretty well, so that didn't last long. But he was a guy that had everything figured out, did the booking, did everything, and he was kind of like, none of us had to worry about that stuff. Alan would get there, and when he brought a song, we learn it. Maybe we didn't have to do that. That was kind of different about Middle Spunk. You can bring in any song, and people would listen to it, and seriously, like they wanted to do it. So that was kind of like through the whole 50-plus years of the band. You never know what you're going to be getting.
Well, and doing some research on Alan Jesperson, found out, like you just said, he was a great businessman. He booked Delano's, I think, not only for your band, the Middle Spunk Creek Boys, but other acts as well. And then he tell us about, what's it called, the Laughing Waters Bluegrass Festival that he started, I believe, in 1999.
Yeah, that's the thing about Alan, and this is praise, not faint praise. He was a salesman. He worked for Happy's as a deliveryman, which meant he had to sell stuff at the stores he visited.
Was that was Happy's potato chips?
Yep. Beautiful. And so that kind of a band leader has to be a good salesman because they have to sell the band.
Yeah.
By golly, well, you and I have both played forever, and we know that. And so he would never say die as far as like getting gigs and stuff. And the Laughing Waters came about because, well, they used to be able to play in the parks now and then, and well, you used to too as a solo artist. Yeah. And all of a sudden, maybe it was gradual, that they just weren't hiring people anymore. And as I recently said something for the Bluegrass Association, we were just like the Little Rascals. We just finally says, let's put on a show, capital letters.
Sure.
And the park board was willing to let us use the band shell at Minnehaha Falls. There were some financial things that happened that was beyond what I knew, but the use of the park was, fairly inexpensive. And what was different, though, is that someone along the line, it was, who knows, probably Alan, decided that we would pay for it by having a program and selling ads.
Brilliant.
And the local business community just went for it. There's that salesman again. And the first show, were you at the first one?
No, I was not in any of them, but I was aware of it.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like going back to the some of the festivals in the parks put on by volunteers. It was like a little Woodstock with people that are nice, and it was just incredibly successful. The bands loved it. They got paid like for a whole weekend's worth of work in 1 hour. The audience loved it because they didn't have to pay, and it was good music, really good. The vendors loved it, the park loved it, and the police loved it because bluegrass fans are pretty nice. So
yeah, right.
It was just phenomenally successful.
Now, Bruce Jagger, how many gigs a year did the Middle Spunk Creek Boys play? And secondly, what will be your memories that will about your association with Alan Jesperson and how those will stay with you over the years?
Well, the second question is the easiest. I'll remember him forever. And it's not like we always agreed on everything, but we always agreed on what the band was going to do and what it should do. And occasionally we didn't like a song the other one person brought, but you know what? We did them. And after a while, you learn that's the way it should be. So I'll remember that, his incredible energy to run a band, sell the band to people, and then the Laughing Waters get the, it's just like, I'll remember the fact that he was like 5-6 years older than me, and I was about 40 years older than him in energy.
This is a great conversation. We're going to go out with this segment with a song performed by the Middle Spunk Creek Boys, featuring my guest, Bruce Jagger. The song June Apple, are you playing mandolin on this, Bruce?
Yes, that was a song with, you know the names. There are a lot of big stars as far as I'm concerned. Jim Chordoff, I think Barry St. Main. The first mandolin break is Mark Breyer.
Wow.
And the first fiddle break is Peter Ostrisco.
Oh.
And the second mandolin break is me with Alan Jesperson playing a really nice guitar break in the middle. And then I believe that Rudy Darling and Peter Ostrisco ended up with twin fiddle. I mean, these are just like, icons.
Yes. Well, these are incredible stories, Bruce Jagger. Thanks so much for taking time in the Wall of Power Radio Hour to speak with us tonight. And I look forward to bumping into you soon. It's been too long.
It has. Well, we know how to get hold of each other now, and then we'll get together. We may not recognize each other, but we both look really good on radio.
Exactly. Thanks, Bruce. You have a great evening.
Thank you, Paul.
Welcome to the last set on the Wall of Power Radio Hour tonight. This is your host, Paul Metza. We're saluting the lifetimes and music of a man the Minneapolis Star Tribune called the patriarch of the Minnesota bluegrass scene, Mr. Alan Jesperson. And we have a man that knows a little bit about bluegrass with us tonight. We're happy to have him. Phil Nussbaum has had a bluegrass radio show, Bluegrass Saturday Morning, that runs 7 to 12, 7 to noon weekly on Jazz 88, KBEM FM. He also does Twin Cities Weekend and Twin Cities This Week. Both those shows promote the work of local artists through edited interviews and song clips. It's been my go-to show for years when I love a little bluegrass on Saturday morning. And we're happy to have Phil Nussbaum. Phil, how are you tonight?
I am well, and thanks for including me.
Well, you are one of the best bluegrass minds in town, and I'm sure we'll have some great things to say about the late, great Alan Jesperson. Tell us a little bit about your history and how you ended up in Minneapolis, Phil.
I wound up in Minneapolis. I had a radio job in Iowa for 9 years. I was a folk music disc jockey, and I did a lot of field recording as part of that. And, I went all over eastern Iowa recording everything from bluegrass, polka bands, singer-songwriter, old-time Scandinavian music. All that stuff is, all over the place, both in Minnesota and Iowa. But I kind of wanted to do something with my folklore degree. And there was an opening at the State Arts Board for someone to be part of the folk arts program and give grants, but also do research. And I applied and I got the job. And so I did that for, I think it was 17 years. And then, so that started in 86. But in 93, Carl Almo, who was the host of Bluegrass Saturday Morning on 88.5, he started that as a high school project. And he was moving on to art school in DeKalb, Illinois, and was looking for someone to take his place. And word got around that I had radio experience. So finally, I think it was October 93, I took over from Carl. And and then when the arts job ended in, I think it was 2003, I kept on doing the bluegrass show and kind of built off that and did some other things for KBEM. So maybe that's more than you bargained for, but that's what caused me to move to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And actually, I've lived here longer than any other place I've lived.
And you're also, it's the perfect gig for you, turning people on to great bluegrass music. You're also a banjo player yourself.
Yeah. And that's how I met Al. I was, there was a time when I was asked to join a band that later became known as Urban Renewal Bluegrass, and by Dale and Prue Palachek, and the fourth member was my wife, Karen Van Norman, who started playing the bass. And she still plays music, but she went back to the trombone, which she played in high school. But anyway, we were at something called the Bluegrass Swap Meet. It later became the Winter Bluegrass Weekend. But anyway, we were sitting at a table and running through some songs, and Al heard us. And so he came over, and Al was the booking agent for Delano's Pizza, which, who'd have thunk it, but that was a center of bluegrass in the Twin Cities area. Every Friday and Saturday night, and if it wasn't, it was almost always bluegrass. Sometimes there would be some other acoustic form that was mixed in. Well, it was 4 hours. Bands played 4 hours. When we started, you'll remember this, Paul. It was 9 to 1. All shows, you always played 9 to 1. Now it's getting to be more like 8 to midnight. which I like better.
Okay. I like eight,
So-
I like 8, 10, but that's just as you get older, you'd rather play better music in a less amount of time because you gotta drive home and get to bed at some point, get your beauty sleep.
Yeah. Well, we were playing in this. I can't remember what hotel it was that this concert, bluegrass event took place in. They said, "Hey, he asked, are you guys a band? What, And he booked us to play in Delano's. And of course, we thought this was, as far as you could go. Well, we didn't think that, but it was, it was great for us. And so we were one of the many groups that was booked by Alan Jesperson over his tenure as the booker for Delano's Pizza. And of course, that was right up his alley because he knew all the players in town. Many of them passed through the group that he played with, the Middle Spunk Creek Boys. And
Phil, if I could just jump in here, when I was doing some research on Alan Jesperson, who passed away at the end of December 2021, he had Peter Ostrushko, Jim Tordoff. He had a really amazing lineup of people that went on to become nationally acclaimed musicians play at some point in the Middle Spunk Creek Boys.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. And always an interesting group, in my opinion. They played some of the old bluegrass, although I think they favored more the folky kinds of things. But I shouldn't. The great thing about the Spunk Boys was, to me, that the care they took in preparing a song for an audience. Just give me a second here. I'm going to take a pull of water.
Yeah.
All right. To me, the act of arranging is what you do to prepare a song for an audience. So it was very seldom do a kickoff, sing, harmonies come in on the chorus, break, and that cut and dry. There was always some little arranging detail that they would put in their songs, and I value that. I can tell, when you hear that, you think, oh, these guys care. These guys go to rehearsal and then ideas come out and they work them out. And then when the audience members go to see a show, they see a good show. So that was the Spunk Boys. And they evolved over time. There were the Mark Kreitzer years. And Alan used to quip from the stage that the Middle Spunk Creek Boys are now the backing band for Mark Kreitzer. And in truth, they did a lot of Mark's originals, and by the way, Mark writes good original songs. So that's what I particularly remember about the Middle Spunk Creek Boys, and I would imagine if they continue to play in some new configuration, that they would continue that interest in creating interesting versions of songs that grab your ear. That's, to me, that's really what it's about.
Well, if the Rolling Stones can play after the death of Charlie Watts, let's hope the Middle Spunk Creek Boys keeps the vision of Alan Jesperson intact with their next iteration. What can you tell us about Alan Jesperson, the man?
Alan was real. It was no, Alan was not Minnesota nice. But that doesn't mean he was the opposite. Alan was Minnesota. I'll just, he was straightforward,
Right.
And so he wasn't afraid to offer his opinion on something, although I would not say that he was overly opinionated, So when you were talking to Alan, you were really talking to Alan. And that was it. And he made no apology for the fact that he loved playing bluegrass, And it was a real highlight. His birthday was about Memorial Day. So he would have a jam right around in the parking lot or the area behind that store that he had, where he rehabbed and sold old-time radios. You know, the radios that are a piece of furniture?
The old Zenith radios. I have one.
Yeah. You know, if you like those, you would have loved the store if you ever went into it, because it was, you know, it was nothing but. So anyway, there would be a jam inside. If it was a really hot day, there would be and it can be a Memorial Day, then the jam would be inside. Otherwise, it would be outside, and, you know, people would bring potluck stuff. He'd have the grill going, and little groups would form, and, you know, people would play and have a great time. So that's, you know, one of his. And another thing, and this shows the community orientation. He wanted to have a festival. And, you know, the Bluegrass Association, the story goes that the Bluegrass Association wasn't going to fund it. So he got it funded. He went to some of the businesses that he knew of, and, you know, almost like door to door, or maybe it was door to door, asking for donations, and had enough to pay the bands. And, you know, he would have a half a dozen bands at Minnehaha Falls, the Laughing Waters Bluegrass Festival, every Labor Day. And it's always an interesting program. Every band plays an hour, so you know you're getting the group's best stuff. And there are some really memorable occasions. And to me, I don't know how he pulled this off, but he had, to my ear, one of the greatest bluegrass groups of all time, the Nashville Bluegrass Band, come and deliver a show. And but Alan's booking was outdone by the weather that day. Just when it's time for the Nashville Bluegrass Band to perform, here comes the rain. And sure. I mean, the wind, of course, you know, the wind blowing left to right, and you're thinking, oh, I don't want fall to begin on September 3rd. No, it's too early for fall to be. Anyway, so you're getting all these thoughts, and many people, you know, grabbed their lawn chairs, headed for their cars. Doug, the sound guy, took down his speakers, basically put the sound away, and many of us just sort of huddled on the stage, you know, for shelter. Okay, so the rain passes through, and there's and the band is still on the stage, and so are we, and it's too wet to go out into the audience and to sit down or whatever. So the band plays its set acoustically. They play great as ever, and we're all on the stage with them. And who'd have thunk it, you know? So, I mean, Alan pulled a great one off when he got the Nashville Bluegrass Band to come. You know, I thought I'd never see him again, because I don't think they're out there performing that much. So I don't know how he pulled that off. But I think one of the greatest groups of all time, and they really kind of dug the circumstances, you know? Oh, we're going to play acoustic. All right, here we go. All right, sure. Why not? Let's do our set now. Rain stop. Sure. Everybody had fun.
It reminds me of the great stories when Bill Monroe back in the day would pull into town, put up his own tent, take some member of his band and his crew, and play a baseball game with the locals, and then would play probably, you know, a lot straight acoustic. So it's part of the tradition. And we're speaking with Phil Nussbaum. He's got a great Bluegrass Saturday morning show, 7 to 12 noon, weekly on Jazz 88 FM. Tell us, the last question of the night here, Mr. Nussbaum, tell us what you believe will be Alan Jesperson's legacy on the Minnesota bluegrass scene. Well, it's the love of the music and the commitment. You know, you could not, I mean, he was obviously committed. I'm not really sure how many years of existence the Middle Spunk Creek Boys. It could be 50. Yeah, the Spunk Boys played a long time, and always with a good commitment to doing something with the music. Honoring the tradition, but putting in your own twist.
And it's not properly understood that putting in your own twist is part of the tradition. You know, that's what all the first generation of bluegrass players that we still listen to did. They did it their way, and so did the Middle Spunk Creek Boys. So it's the the commitment, and it's also, you know, the keeping it real. You know, I think people will remember that about Alan. That, you know, it was when you talk to Alan, you were really talking to Alan.
Phil Nussbaum, that is just the excellent way to end this tribute to Alan Jesperson, the patriarch of the Twin Cities and Minnesota bluegrass scene at large. Listen to Phil every week on KBM in the morning to hear some great bluegrass. This was just really wonderful, Phil. Thanks so much for taking time out to speak with us.
You bet. A great pleasure, and thanks again for including me.
And we're going to end this tribute to the great Alan Jesperson with a song that Bruce Jagger from the Middle Spunk Creek Boys said was Alan's favorite song, called Red Dancing Shoes.
Show me a smile, I'll show you a kiss, and then I'm gonna tell you just exactly what we're gonna do. Put on your dress, it'll make you look fine. Get a colored ribbon, tie your hair behind. We're going dancing, it's gonna make us feel real good. Oh, Papa, won't you make her a brand new pair of red dancing shoes? Make 'em with the love that only you know how to do. Make 'em soft, make 'em light, you can make 'em just right. Then she will dance with me all night. Papa, won't you make her a brand new pair of shoes? Well, I grabbed that girl and I held her tight, and made me feel everything was right. I could feel her heart, it was beating next to mine. Then I told a little kiss and I was feeling fine. Those pretty blue eyes, oh how they did shine. I could hardly wait till they played the next song or two. Oh, Papa, won't you make her a brand new pair of red dancing shoes?
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metza, engineered by the great Brett Johnson. We'd like to thank our guests in this tribute to Alan Jesperson, younger brother Peter Jesperson, longtime bandmate Bruce Jagger, and bluegrass expert Phil Nussbaum. My book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs with a Companion CD, is coming out hopefully by the end of April, by May Day for sure. Follow me on paulmetza.com to check that out. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.